I hope I'm talking loudly now. What is this push to throw away the cultural values that Africans are embedded with? That there's this push to, I don't know, to streamline what it means to be African, to turn our ethnic identities into like blobs. The westernization and the globalization agenda is really tiring. Like I'm Yoruba, and I don't think there's anything that is like an African identity. Like we have different identities. We can communicate with each other, we can like each other, but there's no need for us to pretend that we are one big blob. And though Pan Africanism is a cute sentiment and a nice statement, but it's based on emotions and is not a very logical pattern of thought, especially when you observe the history of the world, other continents, the way human nature is processed. We can have a business plan to do business with each other, but a kind of collapsing of identities into this whole block is not something that is possible. Neither is it something that has really happened outside of context of like enslavement and other kinds of dehumanization that made people turn into a block identity based on either skin color, location, or like, okay, we're all brought to this land and we're going to identify as people of this land, i.e., like what, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago. Actually, Jamaica had Marcus Garvey, who was one of the pioneers of Pan Africanism, which is a concept that was based out of finding roots, you know, finding their roots and saying, hey, this is continent, we belong to this continent, we're going to just go there, I'm going to make something out of it. And it is not an organic viewpoint of organic identity because it is an identity based on struggle and based on an external view, an outsider looking in kind of perspective. This view is something that happens to people who have gone through trauma like enslavement or cultural change or cultural loss or identity loss. It is not something that happens organically like on the continent. The people who took on Pan Africanism on the continent were followers of Marcus Garvey and others in the school of thought who saw his ideas during the colonial struggles to free themselves from European power as something uplifting, as something that they can rally around. The reason why Pan Africanism died after colonialism left was because there was nothing else to the ideology that was very much binding beyond struggle against the outsider and seeing yourself as a big block. When everybody on the continent of Africa, the majority I mean, is black, when everybody, the majority, I'll say again, is black, you go back to your default mode, which is your ethnic identity. You know, group identity occurs when you're facing off with another group. When you're in contrast with another group, that's when you have a group identity. Black versus white, and so on and so forth. Pan-Asianism. It only occurs outside Asia. In Asia, everybody is their own thing. The Chinese is proud to be Chinese. They're not pretending to be Pan-Asians with Japanese and the Koreans. The Korean is proud to be Korean and a nationalist. Same with Japan, same with Singapore. Singapore has a lot of Chinese ancestry as well, but it's more of a blended society with different ethnic groups that kind of formed against the indigenous that were there, and you know the drill. So India is its own thing. This the only time you really see India being associated among East Asians and Southeast Asians, usually the Western world, where there's this push now to include Indians into the Asian would I call it struggle or identity viewpoints, especially with some sections of Asian men saying they were underrepresented in media, and many Southeast Asian guys and East Asian guys and South Asian guys are kind of doing this solidarity of a thing. So this thing really occur outside the continent. When there's an order, there's a group of orders, you kind of unify around a single block. When you're in a continent where everybody's within an ethnic group, people stick within that, which is just normal human nature. That's tribalism is human nature. It's not bad. As if I'll tell you, like you're deceived to think it's bad. But humans separated according to different ethnic groups by their own making. This was something we were born into. This is what we met. This is what will continue to be as long as possible. I don't know if there will ever be a different identity system outside of heritage that will come. Maybe. But for now, that is what we have been seeing, and that's how it has been. Sure, ethnic groups can shift, can change, can blend, and whatnot, but the fact remains is that people have always related and grouped together based on ethnic identity, not on superficial stuff like landmass or color of the skin or shades of colors of the spectrum. This only happens when you are faced with an external enemy. See, I have no problem with Pan-Africanism when it comes to business, as far as we're not being delusional. But we can see it in some parts of the countries of Africa where there's a severe pushback against foreigners. Like, I don't need to mention one particular country, and this country just was reduced from freedom to reach to freedom just like years back. So you can see that this concept is even to racial tension sometimes there is still not that rallying around color as a binding force. People are still doing their own either ethnic bubbles or national bubbles depending on what they prioritize. So some people the national bubbles, especially in Africa, are made believe they are made up by the British and France and other colonial forces. So there you have that. So you need to understand that the basic form of identity is the ethnicity. That's what people align with. The secondary form is the nationality, which many people also align with if they believe in it. You know whether they created that or not. So people are aligning with nationality, the foreign created one, the privately created one, the self-made one and the foreign made one. That's that. The race identity comes after when you're dealing with the outsider threat that is more different than you. Essentially, that's what it is. You know, being pro-black isn't bad, and there's a common sense to it. As far as people can understand what ethnic group is, if you're not bitter over someone's ethnic group, if you're not pissed off people trying to maintain their ethnic identity, you don't have a stick up your ass about it, then pro-blackness is okay and it's lovely, and it's something that we can all do together. And you don't need to be rude about keeping your ethnicity intact. You don't need to be like, you don't need to have a problem with people expressing their own ethnic nationalism, and you don't need to have a problem with protecting your own ethnic expressions if you do it in a polite and calm manner. You don't need to be aggressive about it, basically. Be respectful and just be proud of who you are. When you're proud of who you are, you don't need to be insultive or denigratory about it. So that's my take about the whole Pan-Africanism thing, the whole pro-blackness thing. I have more to say about this, but maybe later. Even within Africa, even outside the countries, within countries, there are certain groups that people have clashes with, and they're all like quote unquote black, and there's still these things. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.